Now we're going to work with the neck piece. And here we have the raw piece before the lines are drawn on it. And the only thing to be careful with here is that the fabric goes this way, meaning the stretchiness in the fabric is here. When you pull in this direction, the fabric is not stretchy. And I'm taking the measurements from page 11 of the San Francisco Zen Center sewing instruction sheets that show the measurements, appropriate measurements. In measuring and marking this, one of the things to be careful about and to note is that on the two ends of it, it's 1.5 centimeters, and on the sides it's 1 centimeter as the selvage edge. So you can go ahead and mark it and cut it out to the appropriate size. It's not possible to see the lines very well in the video, but I've got the side where the lines are drawn facing up. And now we want to fold this. We want to fold this, the 1.5 centimeter selvage is on each, what I'm calling the ends here. And we want to fold it in half so that the lines show. Okay? And then once we've folded it in the half so that the lines show, we pin it. Going through this corner and coming out on the other side in that corner. And then we continuously pin it along the lines. Here's a second one that I've already pinned, so that you see it's, probably can't see the line again, but it's pinned along that line so that it's also corresponding with the line in back. Then the next step, after pinning it in place, is a step that I've already taken, and that is to sew it with a running stitch about somewhere between 1 millimeter and 2 millimeters above the line that you just pinned. Once it's sewn, the pins can be removed. Here we have the piece laying flat. Now we stick our fingers in the open ends here. And we move it so that the selvage seam is right in the middle. Again, difficult to see because it's all black. But this flap is now sticking up right in the middle. And I like to actually take my ruler and measure. And you'll find that it comes about 4.5 centimeters from each edge to the center of that selvage. And then you just smooth these down with your fingers, not ironing them because later it's going to be turned inside out and the ironing interferes. Okay, once that's done, what you do want to do is open up this selvage edge, which has 2 pieces of it, so that each piece lays out flat to the side. And then we iron that, the 2 pieces. I have now ironed that center section down so that it has become flat. we're going to attach the scrim piece to it, and what we do is to line it up, kind of lay it on the middle, and then line it up with the line on one end so that it's right there, and then holding that in place, we come down to the other end and see where it fits on the line. If it doesn't quite, it usually is a tiny bit longer than the line, and therefore you want to mark it where it's longer and then trim it by cutting it along that line. Okay, now it's ready to attach. I'm going to have to describe this since the black doesn't show well, but what we want to do is to attach the scrim piece to, I'll call these two flaps here down below that I've ironed down, that we can have one flap there and one flap there, the two selvage edges. And we want to attach the scrim piece to the top edge here, and just to the selvage, not through any of the body of the neck. So like we've done before, we want to get our, I know that this is blocking things, get our finger underneath both that edge and the scrim piece and pin it to it. Here it is with the first pin put in, and then I'm going to go down to the other end and pin it down there, smoothing it so that there's no bubbles or humping, and then put a pin in this end, and then putting a couple more pins in. Now that we have it pinned, the next step is to, along that same selvage edge where we've put the pin, go along with a basting stitch. And now I've basted that to that single flap, and we're ready to take the step of turning it inside out, which is fairly straightforward. Turn it inside out. Smoothing out the scrim a little bit. It'll take care of itself. And allowing, although you can't see it, the seam to be right in the middle. That seam falls right in the middle as you smooth it out. Now, once we've gotten to this point, making sure the seam is right in the middle, and because you can still adjust it with your hands and roll it a little bit, it's a time to measure again. That seam falling roughly in the middle, about 4.5 and about 4.5. So I could roll it this way a little bit, making sure that the scrim on the inside continues to be centered. It's about 4.5. That's about 4.5. A little bit more. Doesn't matter. Now this could come a little bit more this way. Four and a half. Good. Now I'm going to go iron this. And now that we have it ironed, we want to draw lines on it here to help us, because the lines are on the inside. So measure 1.5 centimeters here, 1.5 centimeters here, here, and here, and draw those lines. The line is drawn on the side where the seam shows. Now we take this with the seam showing and the lines showing and fold it so that the lines and the seams show, and it's folded in half like that. And then we want to pin it along the lines. There it is. There it is, pinned along the lines. And then just above the line, again a millimeter or two above that line, we use a basting stitch across the top. This basting stitch goes through all the layers of cloth, stitching them together. So what you end up with is the stitches a little bit outside the line, basting it together.